going to air it out down the field. Catch and a touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Kosko.
College Football Pick'em on 1490 Sports Betting Radio, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attilas Gym in Egg Harbor Township. I'm your host, Nick Kosko, as always. Every Saturday morning, we'll bring you up to 9 a.m. today. It's already week 3 in college football, and boy, did a lot happen already before the games really got cracking here on Saturday. Clay Helton fired at USC as a coaching hot board. There are a lot of candidates throughout the land that could be interested in the USC job. And of course, when you have one of the biggest job openings in college football, it seems like everyone is on the table except Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney at Alabama and Clemson, respectively. Of course, we'll dive into our picks later in the show and break down some other games going on today here in week 3, 3-2, once again, last week on this very show, 6-4 on the season. So if you've been following me now for 2 straight weeks, you are in the green and you are winning money on these football games. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at NickCosko59 as well. So we'll start with USC, which is where, we kind of have to, considering Clay Helton was fired after 2 games of the season, and this is after USC, gets destroyed pretty much by Stanford last weekend. And that was the final straw for Mike Bohn, the athletic director, and the rest of the USC program. Now, the final score is not totally indicative of what happened in that game. 42-28, Stanford gets the road win against USC, but if you take away some fourth quarter juice from USC, or they put up 15, they were down 21-10 at halftime, and after the third quarter, they were down 35-13. I mean, pretty much it was over heading into the fourth quarter. Simple as that. So when you have a team in USC that is supposed to be a Pac-12 contender and possibly a college football playoff contender here in 2021, you can't have losses like this. Now, I understand Stanford is a conference foe. Sure, but Stanford's not the program USC is right now. Stanford is not in its heyday. David Shaw, God bless him. He's he's actually one of the better coaches in college football. But when you look at Stanford, they haven't had a top-tier season since 2017. They were 9-5 that year. The early days of David Shaw, when he took over for Jim Harbaugh, now he inherited a great team, but he kept it rolling with his own spin on the Cardinal program. He had 3 straight seasons of 11 wins or more. He had Andrew Luck at one point. They were 8-5 one year, and they go 12-2. I mean, they've won 3 Pac-12 titles under David Shaw. 10 wins in 2016, and of course 9 wins back-to-back years in 17 and 18. But in 2019, they go 4-8. So that's really the only down year they've had under David Shaw. And then in 2020, the shortened year, which is just so random for a lot, especially for the Pac-12, they were 4-2. So they're 1-1 now. So Stanford, it's not they're not some schmuck program, but for how much USC was hyped up coming into this season, the Trojans should be rolling. I mean, they have a guy in Keaton Slovis, their quarterback, who a lot of analysts project to be a high first-round pick among the quarterbacks next year. He has not looked like that right now. And USC, by the way, is coming off a 5-1 season where their only loss came to Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. This team was 8-5 in 2019, 5-7 in 2018. That's not up to Trojan standard. And to add, throw a little salt in the wound here, UCLA is rolling right now. Everyone knows how good UCLA is right now through the first couple of weeks. They had a bye week last week, but they're 2-0. Chip Kelly seems to have revitalized his career and also revitalized the Bruins program. And when your division rival is doing those things while you're expected to be borderline undefeated, maybe a 10-win team this year, and to win the Pac-12, a loss like that is completely unacceptable. Now, do I totally agree with firing coaches after 2 weeks? Not exactly. Was this the right move for USC? Probably, but you did it too late. And they always say, if you fire a coach, if you make a move this drastic, this early in the season, you probably should have made it in December of the previous year, right after last season. Now, granted, USC was 5-1, and they looked like a pretty darn good team, returning a lot of guys for 2021. So I get it. You really couldn't justify it there. But they didn't play in any type of bowl game after the Pac-12 championship game. The lasting memory of 2020 for the Trojans was that Pac-12 title game, which they fell to Oregon 31-24. All right, before that, USC was rolling. They beat Arizona State, beat Arizona, beat Utah. They had a game against Colorado that was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic, where they beat Washington State. They get by UCLA. UCLA was kind of back on the rise last year, but nobody really anticipated yet for what they were going to do in 2021. But, we're talking about a USC team that was number 13 in the country despite playing just 5 games and having 1 game canceled. If they finish undefeated and beat Oregon, this team's a top 10 team at the end of last year. And then it depends on what happens with their bowl games and whatnot. I'm sure, but I'm sure if they won the Pac-12 last year and they're 6-0, they would have played in the bowl game. They just opted out last year. So maybe winning that game changes the perception. But in any event, it didn't because Clay Helton was brought back anyway. Now, Clay Helton wasn't all bad. If you're talking about his overall record at USC, it was 46-24, dating back to 2015. Plus, as interim head coach, he was 1-0 in 2013 as well. But when they kept him on as the permanent guy, 2016 they have 10 wins. 2017 they have 11 wins. They won the Pac-12 that year. They lost that year's Cotton Bowl. Ohio State got rid of him there 24-7, pretty much dominated him there. But then that 2018 season is when they go 5-7, and you're thinking to yourself, all right, what the heck? Where did this come from? Why in the world is USC going from 11 wins to 5 wins year to year? They rebound a little bit with the 8-win season in 2019, but they lose the Holiday Bowl. And you're like, all right, this is probably it for Clay Helton. Now, granted, it was tough. It was tough to make coaching decisions last year, although I know a lot ended up being made anyway. But amid a COVID season, you kind of want to give your guys a break because again, the Pac-12 started so late. Some teams barely even got 6 games in, let alone their full 7. So I from that perspective, I can understand why you wouldn't fire Clay Helton after a 5-1 season. You made the Pac-12 championship game. You generally don't want to fire your coach after that. And that season did seem like a vast improvement over the previous 2 years. So I get it. But to me, this is more of a panic move right now. Now, Dante Williams is going to be the interim head coach. He's reportedly a great recruiter from everybody covering the team out there in USC. And we look at our 24/7 site for USC. They say he's a good recruiter. Now, could he be the permanent head coach? I don't know. Very well could be. But he's been around the program for a couple of years, only his second year. But he's been everywhere as an assistant coach. So is Dante Williams really the guy that's going to lead you to? Again, now that you fired Helton, what are the expectations? This is why the move was confusing to me because this was a move that was made because the athletic administration felt that Helton had to have this team in position to win a Pac-12 title this year. But they fire him after the Stanford game? Here's where I'm confused. If this 2021 team is going to be this good, if you firmly believe Helton is not the guy to tap into that full potential, okay, that I can get behind. But you do it after week 2? Now you lost me. Now you throw an interim head coach in there who's never been a head coach ever in his college career. He's bounced around place to place. Nothing against Dante Williams. He's your interim head coach. And now, to look at their upcoming schedule, they're at Washington State. That looks like a win, at least on paper. Oregon State, at Colorado. They have Utah at home. They're at Notre Dame. Arizona, at Arizona State, at Cal. Host UCLA. And then they host BYU. But you mean to tell me this team's all of a sudden, you still expect this team to win 10 games? That was your realistically, that was the expectation for the Trojans coming in. And if they do that, they're probably playing for a Pac-12 title. They're probably playing Oregon once again. Because Oregon is now number 4. By the way, Oregon's number 4 in the country after that win over Ohio State last week. How about that? I mean, the Pac-12 has some juice this year, but I think that is what aided the process here to get rid of Clay Helton after 2 games, because they see Oregon, they get the monumental upset. I guess you can call it monumental, but they upset Ohio State on the road. UCLA is really good this year now. So when you have the 2-time defending champion rolling and your arch rival now pretty good with a big name head coach who is revitalizing his career, you're thinking to yourself, all right, Clay, what are we doing here? This loss is unacceptable. Now, again, they beat San Jose State in week 1. Nothing to write home about, but they won 30-7. Not that they looked outstanding, but they got the job done. Losing to Stanford, I get it's an upset. It was at home, but at this point, I did not quite understand why you were going to fire Clay Helton after 2 games. Now, mid-season firings, I understand. Now, if through 6 games they're 3-3 and you want to make a drastic move, that's fine. You're 2-4, go ahead. 4-2, basically, if you're above 500 6 games into the season, and at that point, after 6 games, you head to the second half of the season, and that's when you start with a road game against Notre Dame. Plus, you have that bye week. So we're talking about USC having 6 games in a row to start the year, and then you have a bye week, and then you go to Notre Dame. If you want to make the decision before the Notre Dame game, because you have a 2-week buffer, that might have been the ideal time to get rid of them. And maybe by that point, even after an upset loss to Stanford, this team could very well be 5-1. Because if you look at the 3 games ahead of them, Washington State, Oregon State, and Colorado, those are winnable games on paper. Now, the Utah game, obviously a challenge, despite it being at home. But this is why the move just made no sense to me. 2 games to me is a panic move. Now, if they suddenly catch fire and Dante Williams is leading this team to a 9-10 win season, then, well, he's got a chance to keep the job himself. Which brings me to my next point. So I don't understand the firing of Helton this early. But again, I made my case as to if they were 3-3 or below 500 heading into the Notre Dame game, I understand making the move then. Because you want to make a change before you play a national power on the road, and they try to clean up the rest of the season. I get it. But as far as who could replace excuse me, Clay Helton, now I don't think I can't see them making any sort of move with a big time hire coming in or during the season. I think Williams is going to finish out the year and they'll reevaluate at the end, because a lot of these guys, at least on our 24/7 Sports USC coaching hot board, these are all guys that are coaching right now in college. Sans 2 of them. But the big names: James Franklin at Penn State, Matt Campbell at Iowa State, Bill O'Brien, former Penn State head coach and Houston Texans head coach. He's the offensive coordinator at Alabama right now. Luke Fickell is a really big one. The head coach over at Cincinnati. PJ Fleck from Minnesota. Mario Cristobal, even Oregon's head coach. Greg Schiano, his name popped up from a couple different outlets. Rutgers head coach. You got Tony Elliott, the offensive coordinator over at Clemson. And then the 2 retired guys, at least according to our hot board, Chris Peterson, former Washington head coach, and Bob Stoops, former Oklahoma head coach. Now, out of all these guys, what direction are you going to go? Now, granted, maybe aside from James Franklin and Mario Cristobal, again, USC at its peak is one of the best jobs in the country. It's LA, great weather all year round, top-notch facilities, insane booster dollars, and it's the Pac-12. Now, I know I've said over the past 2 weeks that the Pac-12 is on the rise right now, and it certainly looks better than the ACC or Big 12 at the moment. But everyone, but USC's a top job. Just with the branding, the tradition. If you bring that program back to national prominence, I mean, you are a hero. College football legend. Now, the only one, I mean, I know James Franklin didn't totally rule it out, but at this point, I know Franklin's jumped from Vanderbilt. He went over to Penn State. He's rebuilt programs. But for what he has cooking at Penn State right now, if I'm Franklin, I almost would. I probably wouldn't even leave Penn State. Again, you're in the same division as Ohio State, and it looks like Michigan State's back on the rise. And plus, you always have the Michigan Wolverines. If Harbaugh actually gets it figured out this year, then yeah, you're in one of the you're in one of the toughest, if not the toughest division in college football. So I get the appeal for Franklin to go out west and rebuild, so to speak, USC and really add legend status to his resume. But he is cruising along. He's getting paid well at Penn State. Penn State has embraced him. He rebuilt that program from the ashes after the Sandusky scandal. I mean, James Franklin's doing one heck of a job at Penn State. Already won a Big Ten title. The only thing that's missing is another conference title and getting to the college football playoff, which they arguably could have made when they won the Big Ten title a couple years ago. He's 62-28 at Penn State. All right, he led Vanderbilt to 3 bowl games. Guy's a heck of a coach, heck of a recruiter. He might be the top option. But I don't know if I would leave Penn State. Got a great thing going. So sometimes the grass is not always green on the other side. Matt Campbell's an interesting story. Iowa State, despite losing to Iowa this past weekend, or last weekend, I should say, Matt Campbell is a program builder. He has built Ohio State into a contender in the Big 12. Now, with more resources and better facilities, I think he could be one heck of a coach for USC. So he's a legitimate candidate. Bill O'Brien, if he wants to become a head coach again, it seems like once you go through Saban's School of Hard Knocks, you're going to get a good head coaching job. Look at Lane Kiffin. I mean, granted, Kiffin went from Alabama to FAU and then to Ole Miss, but if you're Bill O'Brien, you've been the head coach of Penn State before. You were successful. You were, on paper, successful in Houston in the NFL. You had a winning record. You made the playoffs a bunch of times, won a bunch of division titles, but didn't really have any playoff success. And plus, once you became GM, it went downhill, of course. I get that. But Bill O'Brien is now under the Saban Rehabilitation School. That could be an intriguing option. Luke Fickell has consistently turned this down so far this week. Cincinnati's also bound for the Big 12. Fickell is an Ohio guy. If he was going to get a big-time head coaching position outside of Cincinnati, I'm sure he would wait for the Michigan or Ohio State job. Now, Ohio State's not going to open up anytime soon because unless Ryan Day just bolted for the NFL. But if Michigan gets rid of Jim Harbaugh, I'm sure Michigan would certainly go after Luke Fickell. Fickell is a great candidate, but is he really going to bolt for USC? Anybody can be swayed with money. Fickell's just a very intriguing person. He's one of those guys who he is pretty much broke the mold of these guys that are just, they deny. They start talking. All of a sudden, now he's interested in the job. Fickell's a different animal. It just seems like a different animal. PJ Fleck. Now, I'm not saying Minnesota's going to be a sinking ship anytime soon, but Fleck has been, he provides a lot of energy. His row the boat mantra. He provides a lot of energy to Minnesota. He was great at Western Michigan. He nearly led Minnesota to the Big Ten title game a couple years ago. But they were down last year. And this year, it remains to be seen if he can get this program to bounce back. For Fleck, he has a Big Ten job. He's in a good spot. But you might have to strike while the iron is hot. If USC's interested, you might have to listen here. Because if he goes downhill, he could be, I mean, again, Minnesota's not going to fire him after the year. They might not even fire him after the next 2 years. But you have to strike while the iron's hot. And if USC is interested, if I'm PJ Fleck, I'd listen. Mario Cristobal, Oregon. Oregon is, even if USC was going to try to legitimately bring him in, Cristobal would definitely leverage that into more money and a bigger contract out of Oregon. He's kept Oregon back at the national. He brought him back to national power post the Chip Kelly, Mark Helfrich era. This team is almost bound for the college football playoff again at this rate. Greg Schiano over at Rutgers. Don't panic, Rutgers fans. Schiano would probably not be top priority. The Tennessee job already kind of blew up a couple years ago after the fan riot and revolting. But Schiano is back home where he wants to be at Rutgers, where he built this program once, wants to do it again. Plus, it's Big Ten, and he's been promised a lot over at Rutgers, especially once the additional dollars come through and the new facility is built. I mean, why would he leave? This is where he's comfortable. He likes Rutgers. Tony Elliott could be a head coach. He's the offensive coordinator at Clemson right now. Certainly a possibility. Chris Peterson could come out of retirement. Bob Stoops, if you want to get a guy out of retirement, that's the big fish. And I'll leave this here before we hit the break. Urban Meyer, I know that's the big fish. That's the white whale. That's Moby Dick right there for USC. Urban Meyer is not leaving Jacksonville after 1 year. I don't think USC's been trying to get him for years. Urban Meyer is not going to pull a Nick Saban in the NFL. He'd be crazy to, especially if he left midseason. After 1 year, the NFL season goes till early January. USC better have an idea of who their head coach is going to be. Now, I could see USC waiting it out and saying, all right, we have options, what am I going to say? They have plan C, D, E, and F. Not even plan B. Plan A is Urban Meyer. Plan B is Urban Meyer. I could see this, but they will just wait it out for him to try to convince him to get him out of the NFL after 1 year and bring him into USC. I could see that. The problem is he's got a ton of cap space, a very young roster, and he's got Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. That organization is going to give Urban Meyer free reign in the NFL to get it figured out over the next 4 to 5 years if he wants it. We know he bolts, but over the next 4 or 5 years, he's got free reign to get that organization off the ground and rebuild the Jaguars. And that's the NFL. USC, instant pressure. Now, if Urban Meyer was a coach at USC, would I expect that team to win 10 games right off the bat? Probably. But you never know how it's going to be, especially late in the recruiting cycle in January. I just don't think. I think he's the mythical creature you're trying to get, but you won't land. I don't think Urban Meyer is going to end up leaving the Jaguars for USC. All right, we'll step aside and take a quick break. On the other side, we'll start diving into some of the college football noise going on today as far as these games are concerned, some matchups, some ranking updates as well. And then later in the show, we'll dive into my picks of the week. Keep it locked here. You're listening to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you as always. Lead you up to 9 o'clock as we get ready for this afternoon's slate of college football here in Week 3. Before we dive into the picks this week, 6-4 in the season, by the way, 3-2 back-to-back weeks, so we're above 500 in the green, making money. We do have some intriguing matchups that I'm not betting today. It's very intriguing matchups. I mean, one starts with Nebraska and Oklahoma. Now, this is one of the storied rivalries in college football back when they were Big 12 opponents, and it was the supposed greatest, quote-unquote greatest game ever played. We're talking about, over 40 years ago between Nebraska and Oklahoma. Today, folks, this could be an absolute bloodbath. Now, I know Oklahoma is 2-0, and they did not look – I shouldn't say I know they're 2-0. I know they're 2-0, but they did not look the best against Tulane Week 1. winning 40-35, but they took down, they had a 76-0 win last week over Western Carolina, but that's not really saying much. Oklahoma's a darn good football team. They're the favorite to win the Big 12. They're a favorite to get to the college football playoff. Nebraska, don't let that 2-1 record fool you. All right, they lost to Illinois to open the year. They beat Fordham and Buffalo back-to-back weeks. Granted, 52-7, 28-3. They dominated eventually, but don't let the 2-1 record fool you. This is in Norman. I don't expect Nebraska, I should say, to really be in this game at all. All right, that could be the broadcaster's jinx now, but a 22.5-point favorite line here for Oklahoma. Over-under set at 62. I mean, Oklahoma might have to do that virtually by themselves to hit that total. I just don't see how Nebraska is going to make this a competitive game. Now, it's the sexy matchup between these two big brands of college football, but, I mean, Oklahoma's going to come out juiced. They're at home. Now, would I take the 22.5 right now? Probably not. It's a huge line. I'm convinced Oklahoma's going to win this game pretty handily by 3 touchdowns. I could see it, but do I want to take that chance right now with my money? I do not necessarily. But I mean, can Scott Frost actually save his job with this win? I think he could. Actually, I'll tell you right now. This just popped in my head, folks. If Scott Frost and Nebraska, if they win this football game, they'll be 3-1. I mean, they would probably have to win at least 3 more games and finish out 6-6 to make a bowl game. But I'll tell you what, if they win this game, this is going to pretty much save Scott Frost's job. Was he guaranteed to be fired after this year anyway? He's on the hot seat, but was he guaranteed to be fired after year 4? Not necessarily. He's Nebraska's favorite son, after all. Legendary quarterback at the school. Now, if they finish 2-10, yeah, I could see them firing Scott Frost after 2021. But I'm telling you right now, if they pull off this upset, he's going to save his job. He will not go anywhere. He will definitely be back for 2022. There's going to be no rumblings of Nebraska firing Scott Frost, at least for the next 5 weeks, if they upset Oklahoma today at noon. I'll tell you right now, he'll stay right in Lincoln if they pull off this upset somehow. And then if you're Oklahoma, then you have to really look in the mirror. Maybe there are some kinks in the arm and there's some leaks in the boat. But I don't expect that. I expect Oklahoma to pretty much roll through this game. And as far as some other interesting contests, well, look no further than, of course, the SEC. Alabama and Florida. You want to know how good Alabama is? Here's how good Alabama is in the eyes of Vegas. Right, so they're number 1 in the country, right? Number 1 in the country. 2-0. Dominated Miami. Dominated Mercer, for what it's worth. Florida, number 11 in the country. Also 2-0. Hosting this game. Florida boat raced South Florida last week. Boat raced Florida Atlantic first week. Not top-tier opponents. I get it. No Power 5 teams. Alabama is a 14.5-point favorite on the road at 3:30 today against a top-tier SEC opponent, a SEC championship rematch from last season. Alabama is a 2-touchdown favorite on the road. Totals at 59.5. Alabama could very well just put up 45 themselves, and that total is pretty much guaranteed to hit because Florida's going to score. Emory Jones is going to start a quarterback. I don't see Anthony Richardson starting today, barring some last-second change. But the young freshman quarterback is very talented. Looks far more talented than Emory Jones, but he doesn't have the full grasp of the offense right now. He's got a cannon for an arm. He can run like it's nobody's business. Alabama's going to have a tough time defending him. So he'll come in. He'll definitely play today. Don't forget he was banged up last week, though. Pulled up a little bit on that 80-yard touchdown run with this hammy. A little hamstring injury. But that's how good Alabama is, folks. Where's this team going to lose? Maybe they stumble today. Maybe today's the day they stumble. We don't expect it. But I've mentioned it before through the first 2 weeks of the show, leading up into today. Where in the world does Alabama lose? I don't know. I don't know where they're going to lose. Today's a tough game. I get it. Then you look at Southern Miss next week. Cakewalk. Home against Ole Miss. If it was at Ole Miss, I might say, all right, watch out for that one. But is Lane Kiffin really going to beat Nick Saban? Nick Saban's assistants don't beat him. Bill Belichick's old assistants do not beat him. You just don't beat these guys. At Texas A&M. All right, very intriguing. But now, based on last week, because Haynes King, their quarterback, got hurt, he's going to be out for a minimum 4 weeks. He's probably not going to be back in time for that game. So right now, I'm going to chalk that up as a win. At Mississippi State, Mike Leach, give me a break. Home against Tennessee, give me a break. Home against LSU. Now granted, LSU's in a bit of a weird situation right now. They lost to UCLA the other week on the road. Of course, we had that right here on this show. Ed Orgeron might be coaching for his job, possibly. The seat's getting a little warmer. Game's very interesting. New Mexico State after that, cakewalk. Arkansas at home, not a cakewalk, legitimate team. But it's in Tuscaloosa. And then at Auburn. Anything can happen in the Iron Bowl. But Brian Harsin pulling off that win in year number 1. I don't care that they're number 22 right now. They have to worry about Penn State today. And, of course, we'll dive into that game a little bit more in our next segment. That is one of our 5 games we're picking this week. He's got to worry about Penn State today, though. On the road with a whiteout tonight. He ain't worried about Alabama yet. Tell me where the Crimson Tide lose. Tell me where they're going to lose before the SEC championship game. Can Georgia beat them? It's possible. But they don't play Georgia until the SEC championship game. I mentioned the potential stumbles. Today could be one of them. Today could be very well one of them. But I don't see it. But that line is also way too big for me to touch with a 10-foot pole. Am I confident in Alabama beating Florida by 2 touchdowns, possibly even let's just say 17 points today? Yeah, I could easily see that. Am I going to do it? No. I'm staying away from this contest. It's in Gainesville, and I hate huge road favorites. I'll take road favorites, not 2-touchdown road favorites. Unless it was Alabama, unless it's for some reason Alabama playing, a team like Mercer and they're only a 14-point favorite on the road. And yeah, I will take that all day. Because they're going to beat them by 50. But today, I'm not touching that. But it's a very good game to watch. Not going to lie about that one. Florida pulls this one off, folks. Then it's time to start looking at Florida as a challenger against Georgia. And I'm trying not to let my bias sneak in here. I'm a bit of a Florida fan. But today they're up against it. For sure. There's no hiding that. Some other intriguing games on the docket within the top 25. I mentioned Auburn and Penn State. That's number 22 versus number 10. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Virginia traveling to North Carolina. Virginia's 2-0, folks. Yeah, Brennan Armstrong, pretty darn good quarterback. Top 10 in the sack categories in terms of yards and touchdowns. He got 744 yards, 7 touchdowns, slinging it pretty well. North Carolina only 1-1. Sam Howell not looking the. I beg your pardon, those are his rushing stats. But Sam Howell kind of bounced back last week against Georgia State. But again, that was Georgia State for North Carolina. Lost to Virginia Tech. So North Carolina needs this game to bounce back. It's at home. But that's a I'd watch out. I'd watch out for Virginia today. UNC's a 8-point favorite at home. Total set at 66.5. I don't know. I didn't pick it, but it might not hurt to take a little flyer on Virginia on that +8 today. That's a 7:30 p.m. kickoff, so you have a little more time to think about that game for later tonight. Late tonight, we're talking about West Coast action. Number 19 Arizona State at number 23 BYU. 2-0 squads. Arizona State the 3.5-point favorite on the road. If anything's 3 or below, I call it practically a pick'em, but that's intriguing. But BYU being the home dog, I might lean BYU. It's going to be interesting to see BYU in the Big 12 in a couple years, by the way, and come out of their independence. UCLA, our darlings, our darling Bruins. This is an interesting line, and we are going to talk about this coming up. Only because this line is now, it's shifted, by the way. It was 11.5 earlier in the week, and now it's 11. UCLA is an 11-point favorite at home. We do have this game down on the docket for our pick segment coming up. And, of course, where would a show be today if I don't talk about my Rutgers Scarlet Knights coming off a win over Syracuse on the road, old school Big East rival. Gotta love it. As far as what they have today, well, they're playing an FCS squad in Delaware. I'm not worried about it, but these are the types of games back in the day Greg Schiano and his Scarlet Knights would kind of underestimate. You get these early upset losses early in his tenure, or these razor-thin close games that should not be close at all. Now, they're coming to Piscataway, so I would fully expect Rutgers to run away with this game at one point, but I'm totally afraid of this game being close in the beginning. Now, so far through 2 games, being absolutely dominating Temple and shutting down Syracuse on the road last week, Rutgers has one hell of a defense and one hell of a special teams. Offense leaves a lot to be desired because the quarterback, Noah Vedral, while solid, is not really airing it out down the field. The offensive line broke down last week. The run game hasn't really gotten going just yet. It's hard for me to count the Temple game as a nice little offensive explosion in the second half because, again, Temple is just not good at all this year. Now, we could see the offense look a lot better today against Delaware, but when you look at the Scarlet Knights, the offense needs some work. And Sean Gleason, to me, I think is a good coach. He's a former offensive coordinator for Oklahoma State, was good there. This is his second year with the Scarlet Knights, so there's at least some consistency now on the Scarlet Knights coaching staff. But as far as what they're going to do today, they should run away with this game at a point. That would set them up nicely, folks, and I know we will talk about this next week, especially if both teams are 3-0. We are going to talk about this next week. Rutgers at Michigan. Yes, folks. This game went to triple overtime last year. I've seen Rutgers play this team quite close. I've also seen Rutgers get absolutely dominated and destroyed by this team before, namely 78-0 about 5 years ago. So I'm well aware of what Michigan can do to Rutgers, but I've also seen Rutgers beat them before, 2014. First Big Ten win ever. It's going to be a very intriguing matchup between 2 Big Ten squads. They're going to be 3-0 each. Big if. We'll wait and see. That's my little Rutgers rant for this week. Hey, if they win today, Greg Schiano's halfway to a bowl game in just his second year back. What a rebuild. All right, we're going to step aside and take another quick break. On the other side, we'll dive into my 5-pack of picks, 6-4 on the season. Try to keep it above 500 going into week number 4. Got some intriguing matchups to break down coming up. Keep it locked here. It's College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490, Sports Betting Radio.
Now back to College Football Pick'em with Nick Kosko, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Final segment here on College Football Pick'em on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Nick Kosko with you. Of course, we are always presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attilas Gym in Egg Harbor Township. 5-pack of picks coming here now. 6-4 on the season. Got to keep it in the green, folks. Always keep it in the green. Right now, hitting on 60%. Small sample size. I get it. That's fine. Still in the green right now. All right, we are going to start out with a Big Ten AAC matchup. And yes, I said AAC. Soon to be Big 12, of course. Cincinnati, mentioned him before, with Luke Fickell, as he is now one of the top candidates, at least according to reports and, the rumblings, for the USC Trojans job. But this game kicks off at noon. The 8th-ranked Bearcats heading to Bloomington. Now, Indiana, everyone's darling last year. I was high on Indiana last year. I'm not high on them right now because Michael Penix Jr. is struggling. They dominated Idaho last week and they got boat raced by Iowa in week 1. Cincinnati, meanwhile, they're 2-0, top 10 team. I guess you can call them a college football playoff contender, but they're in the group of 5, so unless they go undefeated and a couple other things happen, this team's not making the Final Four. It's just a sad fact of life. The group of 5 is just neglected, put to the side, so hence why Cincinnati is going to get more money and join a Power 5 conference and join the Big 12 in expansion in a couple of years. But I like Cincinnati a lot. They're only a 4. They opened up a 4-point favorite on the road, and as we do, because we don't lock these picks in until we do this show, the line actually shifted to 3.5. So we will make a small amendment here. We have minus 3.5 for Cincinnati. That means the money is going towards Indiana. They like the home dog mentality for the Hoosiers. Meanwhile, I see Cincinnati only needing to win by 4 now, and we win rather than get a push. So I will stick with Cincinnati. I love their offense. I love their quarterback, Desmond Ridder. I mean, don't forget, Cincinnati brought back virtually every starter from last year for that team that was pretty darn good. They were knocking on the door of the playoff as well. Ridder has 538 yards passing, 6 touchdowns this year. He's the man. He's the man. And Jerome Ford, their running back, also very solid in the backfield. 4 touchdowns on the ground, 234 yards through 2 games. So the guy is already averaging over 100 yards per game. Again, it's early, 2 games in, but I like Cincinnati on the road. Indiana, I think they will get it together at some point this season, but it just seems like they're not going to be as good as last year. People kind of know what to expect now. There's more tape on them, of course. So give me Cincinnati minus 3.5 now at Indiana at noon. Michigan State at Miami. I like this game because I like the Spartans this year. Miami, I was high on coming into the year, but they've kind of stumbled a bit. Again, when you play Alabama, you're going to stumble. But they struggled with Appalachian State last week, only winning 25-23. Derek King, is he fully healthy? It seems like it, but you just never know. And Miami just hasn't hit their stride yet. All right, they're still ranked in the top 25. They were 24th in the most recent Associated Press poll. But Michigan State, this team's about to get in the top 25 if they win this game on the road. This game is also at noon. How about Peyton Thorne? Now, I came into the season thinking that Anthony Russo was going to win this quarterback job. He was a pretty decent quarterback over at Temple. Comes in, Mel Tucker's trying to rebuild this program. It's in year 2. Peyton Thorne beat him out, and guess what? Peyton Thorne, 465 yards, 5 touchdowns. He's been pretty darn efficient through 2 games this season. Now, again, it's on the road. Miami has the advantage here, but they are a 6-point favorite, so that line has shifted now. We initially looked at it at 6.5 for Michigan State, but we will be fair here. Of course, we have to make amendments for these changes. 6, so we'll keep it at 6 now here. So we got Michigan State plus 6, still basically a touchdown. I think they're going to keep this game close, if not win this game outright. This is going to be a very close game. I like the way they're playing this year. And Kenneth, I think I just mentioned him, Kenneth Walker. Boy, where did this guy come from? He transfers into the program, and now he's running up and down defenses. He made Northwestern look silly in week 1. He's got 321 yards on the ground this year off just 30 carries. I mean, this guy is averaging 10 yards a pop right now. He's got 5 touchdowns. This guy has scored 5 touchdowns on just 30 carries. Every 6th carry, he scores. That's insane right now. As I mentioned, Peyton Thorne looks pretty good at under center now for the Spartans. So we'll roll with Michigan State plus 6 at Miami for game number 2. Game number 3, Auburn at Penn State. Mentioned this before, but we'll dive into it more now. This is tonight. Whiteout at Penn State, at State College. Auburn is 2-0. They're off to a good start. Again, not cupcake. I mean, basically, we'll call them that, cupcake opponents. That's what they had the first 2 weeks. I know they put up 60 and 62. That's fine, but you're not playing any Power 5 schools. Now you're coming to Penn State. They already have the win over Wisconsin. They dominated Ball State last week as well. James Franklin has this team bounce. If you go back to actually last season when this team was 0-5, they have now won 6 straight games since then. 1 4 in a row to end the year. They've won 2 in a row to start this season. Penn State's rolling, and I'd say they could make a case for number 1 in the Big Ten if they win this game over Ohio State and Iowa. I have them at number 3 right now in my Big Ten power rankings over at 247sports.com. -6 for Penn State. This line has actually moved. We had it at -6 earlier in the week. How about this, folks? This line has shifted now. The money's going to Auburn. Penn State only had a 5-point favorite. You know darn well we were going to pick Penn State first, and now we're definitely sticking with Penn State here at -5. This line has shifted. Total at 53. I think this does hit the over. Penn State offense is starting to roll a little bit, and Auburn has seemed they've gotten together with Bo Nix at quarterback. Brian, again, it's that new coach juice with the quarterback here in Bo Nix. But Auburn coming to State College, white out. We know that's one of the most intimidating environments in college football. Good luck, Brian. You're going to need it. We'll take Penn State -5. Game number 4, we have Mississippi State and Memphis. I mentioned before how I'm not a fan of Mike Leach right now, based on he has one great game last year. They don't do well for the rest of the season, and now it's just so hard for me to trust the Bulldogs. I don't know what it is. I can't trust them, and I know, and I'm a sucker for teams in the AAC, which was basically formerly the Big East. Mississippi State is now this line actually has shifted as well. You get these half-point shifts, 1-point shifts. And again, we were looking at these games earlier in the week when we joined our good buddy Rich Quinones on Back Your Play on Wednesday this week, a little bit earlier than we usually do on Thursdays. But we joined him on Wednesday this week. We initially looked at Memphis at +3.5 at home. They're still a home dog. It's now at 3. So people like Memphis this week. And I still like Memphis as well. I can't trust Mississippi State yet. This game's at 4 o'clock, by the way. I can't trust Mississippi State. Memphis is at home. They're one of the better Group of 5 schools, along with Cincinnati and UCF. And they all play in the same conference. And you can throw Boise State in there as well. They're over in the Mountain West. But I like Memphis. Seth Hennigan. Again, it's good quarterback play. I like good quarterback play, especially earlier in the season. When you have quarterbacks who can really sling it, they're building up all this yardage, all these touchdowns. That to me that's a sign of a team that's going to help you out when it comes to covering the spread and whatnot, and putting your money on some logical bets here. I like Memphis +3 at home. At home, by the way, don't forget that home dogs. I love home dogs. We'll take Memphis +3. Final game, I mentioned it last segment, Fresno State and UCLA. Fresno State actually is a very intriguing squad. 2-1 on the year. They have given fits to everybody. All right, so they shut out UConn. They gave fits to Oregon, nearly upset them on the road, and they dominated Cal Poly. Okay, 2 wins, nothing to write home about. But that Oregon game sticks out to me. And the fact that UCLA is coming off a bye week, they're well rested, so this is either going to end up being a blowout win for UCLA, or they're going to struggle a bit, and Fresno State's going to give them a run for their money. I'm on the UCLA bandwagon this year, folks, but I'm not. But through 2 games, the fact that they had that early bye week coming off the LSU game, I figured that you would want that momentum to keep going. Momentum might have halted a little bit, and UCLA is now they're an 11-point favorite at home. We'll make that slight adjustment. It was 11.5 earlier, but that's a huge number. Now, I don't think UCLA is going to lose this game, but I think Fresno State is going to be able to keep this close. Jake Haener, he's one of the top quarterbacks statistically right now in the country. Now, granted, he's played 3 games, so he's had an extra week over most quarterbacks. But he's already over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. So it's just a matter of, does Fresno State turn this into a shootout while UCLA tries to play ball control with their 2-headed monster at running back, Zach Charbonnet. Led by Zach Charbonnet. But I like Fresno State +11 to keep this one close. Take the Bulldogs. All right, quick recap. Cincinnati -3.5. Michigan State +6. Penn State -5. Memphis +3. And Fresno State +11. Those are your 5-pack of picks this week. And that'll do it for us. We'll catch you next week. Hopefully we are still above 500 going into week number 4. Enjoy the games today, folks. You'll be listening to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.